I was able to go to Reserve, New Mexico and spend some time around there with Bergin. The recording here is in a restaurant there in Reserve. The people there loved him so much, and they still do. So if you go to Reserve and you go to any of these restaurants there, ask about him. There's probably people sitting in there that love him and know him and might tell you some stories about him. This is a story about Charlie Tant that I bet you've never heard. I never did until then. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll talk to you later.
I've got a letter there somewhere at home from Charlie's sister, and she explained about those dogs. They were fox dogs, and in Texas. Charlie came out of Bandera, Texas, in either 1917 or 18. The reason I remember that is because he brought a 30-30 rifle with him, or bought it when he first came out.
Okay.
And he had to be a awfully young man. I think Charlie was born in 1898 or 99, just before the turn of the century. And he had that same 30-30 when I hunted with him all the time. Carried the stock in one hand and the rifle and the action in the other.
Okay.
Had to jam them together and tighten a nut on the side, but the nut was stripped, I think. He just jammed them together and shoot.
Okay.
First time I met Charlie, we killed a big tom lion that very day. And the government had sent me in there to trap, and so I'm cruising the country looking it over and what have you, and I pulled his wild country really nice. And I pulled out on this dirt road, Wild Rose Road they called it, and I come to a cattle guard, and across the road fence going off on each side, and I stopped to take a leak. And I had a little Airedale dog with me, part Airedale, part Hound. And I let him jump out. I was driving a little International Scout at that time, 1962. And I let him out, and he took off out through the sagebrush hunting. He was a good little hunting dog. I hear this real beautiful ball-mouthed dog off the direction mine went. And I thought, man, old Rusty's mouth has sure changed. He got a pretty mouth on him, And here comes this dog down this fence line coming right at me. I'm standing there, and here's this dog coming at me. And when he gets up, and every time he's really running. I mean, he's bounding. And just, oh, and every time he hit, he bawled. And I didn't know it at the time, but he'd bite you. He was a biting dog. But I grabbed him. I reached down, I said, here, boy, here. I just got him by the collar. And there was an aluminum nameplate on it about that long, broke right in the middle and turned two different ways. I pulled it back around. It said, Charlie Tant Lion Hunter. That's all it said.
Okay.
And I turned the little dog loose, and he booger barked me and went right back the way he came, right back out that fence line. And I thought to myself, what was that dog running? Anyway, and I looked around, and hey, I was standing on a lion track that wasn't much smaller than that bull there, brute thing.
Wow.
And anyway, I went looking for Charlie. I knew he had to be around there somewhere. I went looking for him, and I found him in his camp. He had finished hunting for the day, and he was back at camp. He just camped in the brush. He had nothing there at all, And I told him, I said, hey, Charlie, I found this lion track, and one of your dogs was on it, and I messed the dog up because I grabbed him. And he had the little dog then. I said, that's him right there with that broken aluminum nameplate. Oh, yeah, he said that track was 10 days old, I think he told me, or something to that effect. 10 days old. I said, no, this track ain't 10 days old. This is a fresh track. A dog can run it with his head in the air. So he didn't want to go look at it. And I bummed him and begged him. I said, come on, let's go. Get in my rig. Let's go down and I'll show it to you. We go down there, and his eyes bugged out. He said, we'll catch him before dark. I said, I've been after him. So anyway, Charlie got in the rig with me, and we went down there. Get me back to camp. So we go back to camp and load the dogs in his old pickup. He had an old 46 or 47 Dodge pickup, rusted and black and old. And had him a little old homemade wooden camper shell with a tattered canvas that was just tore all to pieces. You know, Charlie wasn't very. He wasn't a much moneyed man. But anyway, we loaded the dogs and we drove back. We didn't go back to that cattle guard. There was a hill to the right of the cattle guard, and the road from his camp went around that hill. In other words, that line that I stopped on had to go on over there and cross this hill and come down. Okay. So we went over there, and he had 4 dogs. Hi, John. This is David.
Hi.
John.
John. Nice to meet you.
We had 4 dogs, Rounder, and one's named Spot, but he called him Licky Pot. It's old Licky Pot. Licky Pot was about half blind because the lion had bit him right in the head. There was a hole about like a .45 slug right in the top of his skull. And he was a really nice, he was Charlie's main dog. He was 3 years old. He was Charlie's main dog, old Licky Pot. Anyway, we dumped Rounder and Ratifier. That was his youngest dog. He was 10 months old. He kept Ratifier on a leash. And I left my little old Airedale loose. And right away, Rounder and this little dog with the broken name tag, his name was Flying Joe. And Flying Joe and Rounder took that lion track. They was 2 years old. And I mean, they got on him right now, boy. I was sitting there all bug-eyed, you know. And we trailed that line. I don't know how far we went on it. We went a long ways. And it was coming dark. And we come to a great big, we was trailing through pinon and juniper, and we came to a big flat with some sagebrush, big high sage. And Charlie said, we'll have to help the dogs here. Said this sage, it messes them up. They won't be able to smell that lion at all. And I wasn't that much experienced at hunting, you know. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll grab a dog or two. And so we got the dogs and we went through that sage patch. And because they blew up as soon as they got to it, they did blow up, and we got them through it and put them back on it. And boy, they opened again, and away they went. And we came to a great big talus slope of rocks, big as this room. And Charlie told me, he said, we'll jump him here. He said, if we don't, he still had Flying Joe from where we had crossed that sage patch. He had Flying Joe on a leash. He didn't have a leash. Old Charlie had. Is the worst thing you've ever seen. There was a ball of chain tangled up that big around like a basketball, and he carried that with these runners coming out there. He couldn't untangle it, you know. So he just carried it. and he unsnapped old Flying Joe. And the Flying Joe went to work in them big rocks with the other dogs. And they were up ahead of us. We were climbing up, and they jumped that line out. And that line turned and came right back down at us, jumping from rock to rock. And I hollered at Charlie.
You can see him coming, huh? You can see him coming?
Oh, yeah, I seen him coming. I hollered. I said, Charlie, there he is. He's coming down. And he jumped up. He took off out through he left the rocks. And he went out through the pinons and the juniper. And I started to run out of the rocks. I had a little old .22 single-shot rifle with no sights. And Charlie hollered at me, don't go. He said he can't go nowhere. He's got to come back. So I heard them dogs make a big circle way out down there. And here I could hear them coming back. And I looked up, and the lion was already there, jumped up on a rock with his mouth open. I said, Charlie, there he is. I pulled up my .22. Charlie jammed that gun together and said, boom! He broke that lion's neck, knocked him flat. And I looked to see when we skinned it out if it was a .22 holding. There wasn't one. I didn't really expect one, but there wasn't one. Unless Charlie shot right in on top of it, that could have happened. I like to think that might have happened. But anyway, we skinned him and got him skinned just at dark.
How far was that shot? How far did you have to shoot to?
Oh, we shot, both of us shot about as far as from here to probably across the road, across the street to the other side to the bushes there.
Yeah.
Not more than 30 yards, 90 feet or so. Yeah. And, anyway, I had just bought me a great big case folding knife. Had 2 blades in it, and Charlie didn't have a knife on him. And so I gave him that knife, and I told him, I said, if you don't mind skinning him with a knife that's been used on coyotes and stuff like that, bobcats and coyotes. Oh, don't mind at all, he said. I've eat them. Charlie was a real hillbilly, a real mountain man. You know, they talk about mountain people. Now, there was a perfect example of the last mountain man. I don't know anybody in this day and age that is straight, not on drugs and all that, like so many of the hippies want to be mountain people. Charlie wasn't on drugs or nothing. He was just a mountain man. That's all that you could say about Charlie. But anyway, we got that line skinned out, and we started walking back to camp. Well, it was way after dark, and we had lost old Licky Pot. And we come to a little stream, and Charlie said, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. I said, good. Yeah, I'd like a cup of coffee. I thought he was joking, you know. Well, he went over this tree, and he pulled out a can that had 2 or 3 other cans in it and some coffee. And we built up a fire there, so we sat there and boiled that water up. That was a pretty little stream, just as clear and golden, coming right through decomposed granite, just really nice. And we were drinking that coffee, and Charlie said, oh, there's Licky Pot now. Licky Pot walked up at that time, and I didn't know his dog, so I didn't really miss Licky Pot, you know. But he walked up, and he had got thrown out of it because he had been bit. He died very shortly after that. And but he was a good. I've got a picture of him somewhere at home, and good deep-chested dog, and he's
Tricolored, or
he don't have much red on him at all. He's mostly a black and white looking dog, and he wasn't the daddy of Rounder and Flying Joe. Their dad was a dog that I never did get to see alive. He had just got killed too, and his name was Judgy, and he was a real high-headed walker dog, real foxhound-looking walker dog, white dog. And
did them dogs come from Texas then?
Yeah. Charlie, he went back to Texas and he got the dogs according to his sister. I wasn't acquainted with Charlie at that time. He came back to Bandera, Texas, and he got those dogs and brought them to California. And he had a brother that lived just a little ways from me there in California that had dogs. And he was from Oregon, and his name was Charlie Tant. Did you know him or hear of him? Well, he worked for the government all of his life, trapping and what have you. And him and Charlie had basically the same dogs. And I think a lot of their stock, these guys always talk about pure this and pure that. Pure wool is what most of it is.